back to the New England Job Show. My name is Brian Henshey, and with us today is Catherine Blake. She's an entrepreneur. She's the founder of Sales Protocol International. She has a passion for sales, marketing, business development, and a heart for encouraging others to be their personal best. Catherine teaches a unique program for the University of New Hampshire called Selling Yourself in a Difficult Economy, which again is an understatement. That class has been featured on WMUR TV, Channel 9, and Catherine has also been a previous guest on the New England Job Show. So Catherine Blake, welcome again to the New England Job Show.
Thank you again for having me.
And so here in our second segment, we were going to talk about interviewing. So if I'm a recent college graduate and all of a sudden I have a resume good enough to actually get me in the door, once I get through the door, what do I say during the interview to get it right?
Okay. Well, the first thing you want to do, Brian, is you want to do some homework ahead of time. If you can find out who you're interviewing with, you want to Google their name, you want to look them up on LinkedIn, you want to get as much background information as you can about that person.
Including if it's a bunch of people. Sometimes it's a panel interview. If you have 5 people interviewing you, you want to know if it's going to be a bunch of people firing questions at you or if it's going to be one-on-one, 5 individual interviews. But continue.
And sometimes you don't know. So part of the process before you get to the meeting is to do your reconnaissance. Find out, obviously, research the company, read everything you can on their website, Google their name, see what the analysts are saying.
See if you have a connection on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Absolutely. And then research the person you're meeting with. When you get to the meeting, the connect part, so we actually have a process that we recommend, and the first step in that is to make a connection with the person. Mm-hmm. So when you meet the person, you want to bring up something that you've read about their background. For example, I might say, Brian, I realize that you're on the board of directors for the American Red Cross. What brought you to the Red Cross? Mm-hmm. And you might ask a question or two about, was that a personal, has more to do with your personal values, or was it something that was business related? Mm-hmm. And that way you're breaking the ice with the person, but you're making more of a personal connection. Mm-hmm. After that, the next step is to really get into delivering your value, and we call that the value proposition. And the value proposition is really going to be short. It's going to be where you deliver some facts and statistics about yourself, a couple of strengths, and a quick example of that strength in action. Mm-hmm. So the fact that stats might be, I'm a recent college graduate from the University of New Hampshire. I'll just, make this up. University of New Hampshire. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing, mm-hmm. and my strengths are strategy and focus. And I say this because I had a recent internship at a nonprofit organization where I had to go in and figure out with all the chaos how to put together a database and actually put together an awards event, mm-hmm. where we invited people from all over New England. We invited the governor to speak, and we gave out 10 industry awards to 10 different prominent companies in the state. Mm-hmm. So this is an example of where I brought in my strategy and my focus. We were able to pull off this event very successfully. This is the type of value I can bring to your organization.
So be very...
And then I'm done, right? Okay, there, in that step. But go ahead.
Be very clear about what value you can deliver
Absolutely.
To them.
Yeah.
Well, what's a mistake when you work with recent college graduates? What is a mistake that you see them making with this? I presume you do mock interviews during your
We do,
course.
And typically what happens is they'll walk into the room, and if the interview candidate doesn't take a little bit of control of mm-hmm. the meeting. Now, some interviews you're going to walk in and they're going to have a list and they're going to pound through the list. But what I'm recommending is that you kind of take a step back, try to make a connection with that person, deliver your value, just you have this ready and prepared, and you're going to be proactive in telling the interviewer about yourself. And then the next step after you deliver your value is you're going to ask them some questions. Mm-hmm. All right? And the questioning segment, and actually we have a slide number 7, if you want to pull that up for a second for just a moment so people can see the process. When you ask questions, there are 4 categories of questions that you're going to ask. The first is about the current, how they're running the department today. So if you're interviewing for, say, the marketing
Which one is that under
department, that would be number 3.
Okay.
So if you're interviewing in the marketing department, you might say, how is the department running today? The second question would be around what are the goals of the marketing department?
Okay.
Followed by the third question, which would be what are some of the challenges that you're facing? And the fourth would be when you reach these goals, how will that affect the department and the overall company?
Okay.
So these questions, if you've got an hour interview, these questions and the information you're going to be gathering as a result of asking these questions, this could go on for half an hour. And by asking good questions, what's happening is your value is coming through.
Well, you're also showing that you are inquisitive in being interested to know what the issues are and what's happening and what the status is right now. But one thing I just want to quickly point out,
Sure.
I remember when I was first out of college, that I was always so intimidated going into interviews. I was pretty confident based upon my experience with interviewing. I was pretty good with it,
Right.
I felt, but at the same time I was a little nervous. And one thing that a lot of new college graduates think is that every interview you go into is going to be with a professional interviewer.
Right.
And what is the thing that a lot of people realize? That sometimes the person doing the interview is more afraid than the candidate.
Exactly.
So,
Or, hey, Brian, I can't take the interview. Somebody's waiting in the lobby. Would you mind interviewing them?
exactly.
How often that happens all the
So
time, and the
sometimes-
candidates never know. Yeah.
Right, so sometimes not the interviewee, but the
Right.
interviewer is more intimidated than the interviewee.
Exactly.
So that first step on your slide there,
Right.
about making a connection,
Yeah.
you really, that is so essential to have a good start to your interview because, well, for obvious reasons.
Yep. And actually again, if you think of the interview and if you have an hour and you spend the first, and I'm not kidding, the first 10 minutes making a connection and it's going well and their eyes are lighting up, you've hit a home run. Even before you get into the job and so forth,
Right.
you've hit a home run.
And of course, the process of an interview is to figure out what's wrong with you. A lot of
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of young people think that, oh boy, an interview, that they think, oh boy, I'm getting through the door, so now they want to learn more about me. Well, really,
Right.
they like your resume, and now they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what else do we need to know about this person? So,
They want to see you in 3D. And
Sure.
Exactly. So by going in, by taking control, and they're going to be amazed because what's going to happen is, as the candidate, you're actually going to ask them great questions, get the information you need, and then at the end, you're going to hit the ball out of the park by showing them through examples and storytelling how you are a great fit for this organization. So after you go through the questioning process by asking them, the 4 questions that we just talked about, what you're going to do is you've listened now. Let's just say, if we put a timetable on this, you've been listening for 20 or 30 minutes. You can then sort of stop at that point and say, Brian, based on everything you've told me, I'm confident that I can help your organization, and here's how. And now I'm going to tell you 1 or 2 really crisp examples of what I've done in an internship, or if some students haven't had an internship but they've done an on-campus job, or some are athletes. They can talk about what they've done as a leader on their sports team. But you want to come up with a couple of really crisp examples of how you've helped, and those you're going to have in your back pocket and ready.
Yeah,
Okay?
Two things: accomplishment lists. List out some accomplishments that you've made, which you can bring up in an interview, and also sometimes they call them CAR stories or PAR stories: problem, action, result, or challenge, action, result, if you want to be politically correct. So, but yeah, having those at your fingertips is very good to have.
And then followed by, what are your thoughts at this time, which is what we call in sales a trial close, because you want to get their feedback. You want to get a sense for, I call
Say that line again?
So what you say is, what are your thoughts at this time?
What are your thoughts at this time?
And it's open.
That's very open.
And what I want to do, I may have, 5 minutes. I want to find out. I want to test the waters with you to see where I stand. But it's not a close. The close is a yes or no, right? So we want to find out, and you might come back at me with, well, gee, you know, and this is usually where you get, you know, well, I'm not really sure you're qualified, or something that I now have to defend myself, and I have to come back fighting. And what I always tell, you know, recent college graduates is, they are going to test you, and you want to fight for it. Particularly when they throw that question and it's going to feel negative, that's the test of your real mettle as a leader and as the right candidate. You have to come back fighting, and you have to come back and deliver your value.
I want to make sure I asked you this question, and this is a question about after the interview. How do you know that when you go to follow up? Of course, after your interview, you want to make sure that you follow up. How do you follow up without crossing the line into harassment? What is it?
Okay.
What is a proper amount of time to follow up after the interview?
Well, let's go back to the interview for 1 second, because there is
very short on time. But
yep, there is a close, and here's how you want to close your interview. What you want to say is, after I ask you, what are your thoughts? We have a quick dialogue. I'm then going to say, Brian, what are the next steps? And when should I follow up with you? And how would you like me to follow up with you?
And those are both very important questions.
Thank you very much. And that's it. You take down the information, and you keep on the clock. So that means then you don't walk out wondering, right?
But of course, after you do that initial follow-up,
right?
Then if you don't hear back from them,
if you don't hear back from them,
it's a tough economy, very difficult.
It's a tough economy. I recommend a handwritten thank you note. I'm sure everyone's heard this. Handwritten thank you note, followed up with an email. If you don't hear from them in about 2 weeks, I would give a call and just leave a voicemail.
And I even hear about some candidates that it's even being recommended to have an immediate thank you note via email. So if you can pre-write something, save it as a draft, and then almost literally as you're walking out the door, you can hit send and then send that out.
As long as you include a couple of salient points, and when you write the thank you, you want to be very specific to them. And if we talked about something that you're doing aside from work, like you're on a board of directors or you're coaching a sports team, I would bring that up, because that's going to hit them more personally, and it's going to make you more memorable.
And 20 seconds for this answer. Once you land a job, are you safe?
You're never safe. I highly recommend that you always join a young professionals organization. They're all over the country. You can typically find out about them through your Chamber of Commerce. Be a serial LinkedIn type person. Everyone you meet, you want to connect with them on LinkedIn. And finally, if you can, join an industry group, and don't stop networking.
And your website, Catherine Blake?
Catherine Blake. It is www.salesprotocol.com.
Salesprotocol.com. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
My name is Brian Henschey. Thank you again for joining us here on the New England Job Show.